Hello everyone and welcome back to Axonon Gamers. It's been quite some time. I have been away playing this game right here, Persona 5, for quite a while now. It's roughly a month ago this game was released in Europe and I believe also in North America. And the thing is, I've been wanting to make this video for ever since, really. The game is so good that ever since like my first session with the game, I had so many things to say about it. Really, I have never played a single player game, like a single playthrough of a game for as many hours as it took me to finish Persona 5, and like it did so many things right for me. I always on this channel talk about like how good I think games are, and then also what I think about them, and then like my my journey or search for a perfect game all the time. But Persona 5, I believe, is perfect to me. And it's most definitely one of the best experiences I had with a video game myself. Like everything I'm looking for in a JRPG, especially Persona 5 did just that. So I'm not sure entirely where I want to start when I'm going to talk about it now finally, but let's um, let's start with how fantastic I believe the combination of story and gameplay is in Persona 5. So let's let me just say like this. There are a lot of games that I play for the story alone. The story is my favorite part in many games. Danganronpa games and many other adventure or vision novel type games like the Ace Attorney series. Those kind of games I would play for the story alone, and if I would get stuck in them, or like if I just didn't enjoy the gameplay at the time, I would never hesitate to look up a walkthrough or just rush the gameplay or play on a easier difficulty, because the gameplay was never what I was there for or something I enjoyed at the time. And then we have other games which I play for the gameplay alone. This made me think about a friend of mine called Mr. RPG Crazy here on YouTube. He recently talked about Neo, a very recent game on the PS4, and he said that it had like the most horrible story ever. Like that was really really bad, but he still enjoyed the game. And I have many games like that too. Bloodborne and Dark Souls comes to mind, games that I played for the gameplay, and I would replay those games and eventually get invested in the story. But the first time around, I was there only for the gameplay, and they were good enough to justify being played anyway. I hope that makes sense for you. So what I'm trying to say here is that post Persona 5, this game right here, it has both. So the thing is that the structure of the game helps so much because it has amazing characters and a fantastic story, good enough for you to really want to keep playing the game. But then also, the gameplay is so much fun, and I would always look forward just as much for to the next story segment in the game, as well as trying out all my new abilities and just keep playing the gameplay of the game. And they both work together so well because let me just say like this: in Persona 5, you're playing as real people in the real world. It's a modern, like very modern setting in the game, and during daytime you can do anything from you go to school, you can read books, go to the cinema, and yeah, like all kinds of stuff. You can even go to the arcade or play video games at home. There are like fine details like that. you can go to second-hand shop and buy a CRT TV and a video game system so you can play games at home. And the thing is that doing all these like normal activities would increase your social stats. So you have charm, guts, knowledge. Um, let's see. Um, yeah, there are a bunch of those. Proficiency was one, and um, yeah, I kept forgetting about them. But yeah, there are a bunch of stats you level up, and for some points in the game in the story, you will need to achieve a certain level of these stats to get extra scenes in the main story. So you want to do your best when you're playing the game to get the most out of it while you are looking forward to the next story scene. So you will get as much story as possible, and all the story you get from side content will eventually give you new abilities when you're fighting the game as well. Um, so that's the thing. Um, all these normal activities in real life in Persona 5 um, adds to the metaverse, which is kind of like the monster world in the game. The group of people you play as, they go into minds of other people, bad guys, and you visit like dungeons that are based on the personality of these bad guys. So they are very creative in design too. Um, let's just say the first one is a teacher, and so his dungeon is like his vision of the school where he works. I don't want to say more than that, but they can be so creative because of this, because it's a alternate world where they can do whatever they want, and because they can be so creative in terms of aesthetics. They also take their chance to be just as creative with the gameplay. It's really fascinating, and so every single dungeon have their own gimmicks. So the game never feels repetitive, even though it's super long. It's well over 100 hours, and you keep doing the same things over and over again. Eventually, but you will always have new story, and every single dungeon is unique enough, both in looks and the gameplay, like I said, and also every time you go back to the RPG gameplay, which is like the battle system and stuff, you've learned so much more from the real world in the game, be it like new abilities or things you got from the last time you were exploring the dungeons, that I always felt that I wanted to go back playing the RPG part of the game to try out my new abilities every single time. And this is also a monster collecting game at the same time, so it gets even better because while you have a very strong visual novel style game, as well as like, I don't want to say open world because it's really not. It's really not an open world game, but it has that amazing attention to detail that many open world games have, or rather sandbox games, I guess. The comparison to GTA or like say Watch Dogs is a game I played recently. But the thing is, in those games, there's so much you can do, and the same thing is here in Persona 5. And it's just so amazing to me how a game that has all these different things you can do, and for all of them to make sense and actually have a reason to be there, and not just for graphics or for show, or because the creator wanted to have these kind of things in the game. Like, all of them give you things that will keep you coming back to do this like huge variety of things, activities you can do in the game. So going back to, I was talking about the game being a monster collecting game as well. So the name persona in the game is based off the monsters you have, which are um, they're called personas, and they are um, like it's supposed to be a reflection of your mind. So like every character has a persona that fits the character very very well. But the main character have this thing called a wild card, and the wild card allows him to have a bunch of different personas, and so you can either fuse personas you already have to create new ones, or you can get new ones from battles, pretty much like in the Pokemon games. Um, and when you are in these battles, fighting using your personas, you also like besides using your personas and all the abilities they have, you also have the abilities from your confidants, which are your real life friends outside of the monster world. So, besides doing all the activities like going to the gym or reading a book in the real life, you can also hang out with people. And when you do so, and when you get closer to all your friends, you get new abilities to use in battle too. So let me try and explain this in the best way. Some of them could be that your best friend, who could be one of your party members, if you level up their confidant levels high enough, they will take damage for you and stuff like that, which really helps you out. And because of that, it really encourages the player to play on a higher difficulty level if you're gonna do everything. I can imagine if you max out the game and do everything, you will get so many abilities and so many rewards from just playing the game that it would get too easy. So I was playing on the hardest difficulty, and it really encouraged me to 100% the game, and I never felt as rewarded throughout the game doing side content like that. It's usually like when you've done all the side things, you get a like huge reward, or after completing the game, you would get like crazy stuff for new game plus, or like the ultimate weapon. But Persona 5 is so excellent because throughout the whole game, all these small things will add to the overall experience. And the same thing goes for the story. The story gets expanded the more these side things you do. So going back to the battle system, like I said, having a closer bond to your friends will make battles easier. And one of the ways you can recruit personas to get more monsters to your collection is by actually talking to other personas. And when you do so, you'll have to say the right things to them to actually convince them to join you. And it's a lot easier in this game compared to many other Shin Megami Tensei games where I heard it could be really frustrating. I haven't played those, so I'm not too sure, and this is new for the Persona series. But there was always like they would start talking to you, and then you had to answer them 2 times. You had to get it right at least once, I believe, to recruit the persona. So if you screwed up the first time, you always had a second chance to say the right thing. And if you failed, then the battle would just keep on going. And if you've kept fighting, you would get the chance to talk to them again, or you would have to talk to it the next time you fight that certain persona. But you will eventually also get abilities if you level up your friends enough that they would jump in and talk with the personas instead. So if you fail to convince a persona to join you, one of your friends could help you out. So it's all of these amazing abilities you do get from leveling up your friends and doing activities in real life. I can't seem to talk about that enough, but I think it's so amazing because, for instance, watching a horror movie in the game during daytime because you have one activity you can do in the daytime and then one activity you can do during the night. But say if I spend time watching a horror movie, which would increase my character's guts or courage, that might be needed to level up my friendship with a friend of mine, because in their particular story, um, they might have been stuck in a certain part of their story where your character needs more guts to progress in their kind of little short story, because every single character you go out with have their own story, and and I think it's so impressive as well, because they keep they keep hinder you from progressing these confidants. They were called social links in the older games. Um, but sometimes you can hang out with people and grow your relationship with them, and then there would be this stop where you didn't have like enough courage to progress their confidant level. And it feels like the writers timed these stops with the main story so well, because when you eventually unlocked the possibility to go further into their own story with these separate characters, they would somehow, in some way, always feel kind of connected to where you were in the main story at that time. It's it blew my mind, because in Persona 3 and 4, these side stories were separate things, never connected to the main story. But I felt like all the confidants in this game were connected to the main story somehow, and it expanded into this amazing experience to me when I had maxed out all the confidants and going for the end game. You can just imagine how that felt. It was incredible. So so there's that. What's new in Persona 5 as well from 3 and 4 is that in the game you it's a turn-based JRPG, by the way, and you have different elements. So um, in battle you can use different elements like fire, electric, and wind and stuff to your opponents. But you have two new elements, and those are psychic and nuclear. And I felt that this is a weird thought of mine, but I felt like psychic and nuclear are two elements that I think really fits the whole like um, psychological themes of the Persona series. Um, Talking about the story just briefly for a bit, is that only 5 hours into Persona 5, they had already talked about torture, trauma, murder, suicide, and even rape, which are like themes you don't see in JRPGs that often. So it's a very dark and serious game because of that. So for the game to go on for well over 100 hours with such a serious story really blew my mind. So what I was trying to say was that I think psychic and nuclear kind of fits into like that theme, and there are two like great additions to the gameplay, because in the older Persona games you had physical attacks where like if you would attack with a spear or if you would attack with a sword, that would be two different elements. Now you just have physical attacks and more elemental attacks for weaknesses, and that's important. You also have guns now, which is cool, and I will talk more about the guns in a second. But why having like great variety of elements and weaknesses in the game is important is because a huge part of the battle system is actually going for the weakness, and always be ready to have a certain persona in your party so that you can take advantage of the weaknesses of your enemies. Because every time you hit a weakness, you get to attack again. And that's been a thing for Shin Megami Tensei ever. I think it's been for every game in the series. And one thing that's new in Persona 5 is that when you get that extra turn from hitting a weakness, you can choose which character in your party is going to get that extra turn. So say you attack an enemy that's weak to fire because your element is fire. And then the next enemy that you would hit to get another extra turn would be weak to something other than fire. And maybe the character who would get the extra turn doesn't have any other elements than fire. In the previous games, that's when you would just have to attack regularly or just block. But in this game, you can pass over that turn to the character that actually has the right element. So character number one would attack with fire, pass over the extra turn to their teammate, which would attack for wind for the other enemy, which would give you a third turn. And this makes it even more interesting to play on the hardest difficulty, because sometimes I remember from the older games that I could do a area of effect attack and just wipe out the whole battlefield. But here I really have to think about the weaknesses at all time, and sometimes even gamble that if I want to go for a critical hit just by chance, because critical hits also give you another turn. So yeah, it's the gameplay is so good, because like you get all these new abilities, and so it's such a great battle system to play. And what I've also mentioned previously about the dungeons in the game, they've been very creative with how they look and how they play. So all in all, Persona 5 has an amazing battle system, a very fun and addictive monster collecting system as well, has some incredible side stories and side quests in the game that would like make those other systems even better. And on top of that, you have like an amazing story. The story in Persona 5 is something I don't want to spoil, so go into it entirely blind, I believe, which I did, and so fascinating. It's one about mysteries. It's not one of those stories where you have like a main bad guy or a final boss and just a journey there like many other JRPGs. This is one about solving mysteries one after another, and every time you solve one, it would reveal another one which was even bigger. So you keep getting so invested in the story because it builds up in such a nice way. And having all these side stories with the characters at the time would keep me invested in the world of the game, and just keep me playing for as many hours as I did. I played Persona 5 for 167 hours, this single playthrough of mine. And I would never be able to do that in less than a month if I wasn't having so much fun with the game. Like I said earlier about how I play some games for the story alone, those games can take me quite a while, because if I get too bored of the gameplay, I will not finish them very quickly. I will play for them for the story and then take breaks all the time. But Persona 5 was one of those games which I could not let go of because the story was so good, and I didn't even at any time want to put the game down because the gameplay was so fun. I even had alarms in the morning waking me up to play the game. I was so excited to play Persona 5. It was when I stayed up late at night and I would go up early in the morning just to play because it was so much fun playing the game. And that's how good the gameplay was. And the story, it was something I discussed with many friends of mine during the time we played the game. So that's how good the story was. There was always something to like discuss about, or a funny moment that we would like to share with one another and just laugh about. I had such a great time playing Persona 5 together with my friends discussing the game. And another thing that I guess I should mention that would emphasize on how good the story was that I think 75% into the game, I believe. So not the ending, but very far into the game actually made me cry. Like, I was so invested in the story and this particular character, which was my favorite character in the entire game. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but something happened that made me so unsure about what was going to happen in the story. I had no idea because I was playing the game blind. I had no spoilers or anything. And that's the interesting thing about the game as well, playing it like that. I didn't know any of the party members that would join me or not. And so there was a lot of times that I was like almost nervous because I didn't know who was gonna survive or not in this world of Persona 5. Um, so yeah, what more can I say? As far as story, characters, and just immersion, this this has to be one of the best, if not the best, JRPG I have ever played in my entire life. I've, like I said, I've never played a single playthrough of a game for 160 plus hours before, so that says a lot. It was just that good, and I was so immersed in the game. Um, so what's also worth mentioning about the game is that the graphics and the music too are superb. If you played a game called Catherine, you might have a hunch of how good the game looks. Catherine is a game that has so good graphics that the game is pretty short. Like it's one of those games where graphics, excuse me, graphics comes first before anything else. It's a very slick and stylish looking game, and and most people wouldn't mind the length of the game because the presentation makes it so interesting to follow and to play. That short and exciting experience would be worth it alone. But Persona 5 uses the same graphics engine and style as Catherine, while being all those hours. So so that really blew my mind too. It's amazing how a game can look this good and having this length. Also, with no season pass or no day one patches or anything like that, the game is just done and it looks phenomenal, plays perfectly, and like the length is incredible for a game released in 2017. I have to say it really is a masterpiece of a game. Um, and like I also said, the music is superb too. Persona 5's soundtrack is one of a kind because it's not one of those soundtracks that has a few good songs and those would be like super memorable, um, and with like a lot of bland tracks to fill out the soundtrack. This is one of those few examples of a game where the entire soundtrack is super good. Like there was so many songs that shouldn't have been good if you compare it to many other JRPGs. Um, so let me try to explain that. What I'm trying to say is that I listened to the soundtrack before playing the game. That's the only thing I did spoil, basically. And there was so many songs in the game that I believe or that I thought would be during battles or in like super important story segments, but those would turn out to be like shopping music or music that would play during like running around in rainy days. Um, Music with vocals and lyrics would play just during casual gameplay, with nothing particular like important going on in the story. Um, so all of these like less important moments of the game would still be very memorable and such a joy to play because of the graphics and the sound in the game. Um, it would always be like such a joy to look at and listen to while the gameplay being so much fun. So it really is the full package and the masterpiece that I'm really trying to say that Persona 5 is. So yeah, top notch stuff. So I guess that will be it for now talking about Persona 5. But like I said, this was a playthrough of a game that I played for 167 hours. Like that was the exact amount of hours I played. And during that time, well, I guess some of those were me picking up my phone, like text messaging and stuff, and over exaggerating and saying that the amount of time I was away from the game would be like a huge number, like 10 or 15 or 20 hours, the game would still be over 135 hours long, which a friend of mine, Joe, X here on YouTube, that's the amount of hours it took him to beat. So I'm not the only person who like put this many hours into the game, and like I could think that I was slow. That would be the reason why it took me so long, or that I played on the harder difficulty, or that I actually did everything possible in one single playthrough. But no, the game actually is that long, and I'm not the only one, like I said. So going into the game, my advice to you is to maybe not play too many other games at the same time, and actually consider if you want to play on a higher difficulty, because I believe, putting everything aside that I did, including the channel, so sorry guys, but this was a month of my life where I almost exclusively, besides work, played Persona 5, and really trying to do everything in the game, and successfully doing so while playing at the hardest difficulty, just turned out to be one of the greatest experiences I had in gaming. And I'm pretty confident to say that it was the best experience I had with a JRPG, for as long as I can remember. So that's Persona 5, everybody, and if you're a fan of JRPG, this is a must-play. I already believe this is a must-play game, for anyone, be it you be into JRPGs or not. But I think this is one of those games that you really have to play, and especially if you're into the genre. And if not, I guess this is so modernized and so good, in a lot of ways, and so different to many other RPGs, that this could be a great starting point as well, I guess. And also the review scores of the game, which I think are really, like, they're really accurate. They're so high that I hope this is one of those games that will make JRPGs great again. Like, I'm always a fan of the genre, but this is not a genre of games that everybody plays. It's very niche, in that sense. So hopefully Persona 5 will give this genre more fans, and that the fans we already have actually go out and pick up this game and play it, because it's so good. I can't stress that enough. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, get gaming.